Today I've got this Lumetrix imaging photometer model 400 made in Canada. This is a small video camera that, from what I can tell, I am no expert on the subject, these cameras are designed to measure very small changes in brightness. They're often used for looking at, say, the dashboard console of a car. You can look at each character individually to make sure that it's lighting up evenly and properly. And that's pretty much all I can find out about these things. It's some specialized equipment that isn't very common. I'm sure someone out there knows a lot more about it than I do. But anyway, this particular one kind of looks like a security camera, although it's in a very heavy-duty case, metal, completely metal. When I purchased this, it came with this weird adapter, which someone may recognize as probably for attaching to a microscope or something. I'm not sure. I've never seen this particular mount before. This is a standard C-mount, and I do have some lenses. Unfortunately, these are CCTV C-mount lenses, which is actually a CS mount, and it actually goes in a little further than a regular one. So when it's attached, the distance between the lens and the image sensor is off. So the only way I was actually able to get this thing to focus was to put it right up to, in this case, my oscilloscope run stop button, and I was able to get it in focus. The sensor used in this is a Sony ICX205AL, which is a half-inch 8mm sensor. It's a standard CCD and it's black and white. So when this thing has the color mode turned on in the software, which I'll have some screenshots of later, the colors are all simulated. It's a black and white sensor. It can't see any colors whatsoever. This particular one can do 30 frames a second. Oh, my cat is jumping at the window because there are birds at it. And it has approximately 1.45 million pixels. So not a bad resolution. The effective pixels are 1392 by 1040. So not quite 1080p, but kind of close because it's a 4:3 aspect ratio. It's not the widescreen ratio. It does have the height almost. But getting back to the hardware, on the back of this thing we've got a DIN style power or connector. I don't know if this is for a keyboard or if it's for some kind of foot switch or whatever. There's a little LEMO connector here with 4 pins, some status lights, and 2 FireWire 400 ports. I was able to figure out the software for this thing by connecting it to my computer via FireWire and then reading the device manager information when it couldn't find the driver. I was able to track down the part number, and it uses software called Capture, which I was able to download for free, and it's very basic. It just lets you do some settings like the exposure and various capture modes. Let's plug this thing in, and it is quite loud. I don't know how well that picks up on camera, but it does have a very loud fan in it. And turn that off. And it's completely powered by FireWire, of course, which is one of the nice features of FireWire. And in there you can see the C-mount. And let's try and get this thing apart. Now, I have been in this thing before, briefly, so I should be able to get these off. With all the screws out, you kind of disassemble it in pieces. Like the whole thing, the front comes off, and then you start sliding the board out with this trailing behind. Back panel. There we go. So the inside is just a pretty heavy duty metal enclosure with tripod mounts on both sides, and that's it really. And get some of this out of the way. on the back. Now, I don't know if this happened from me taking it apart the first time or what, but one of these connectors on the LEMO connector is, or one of the wires on the LEMO connector is broken off. Not that it really matters, I'm not even sure what that's for. Probably a video output, but I'm not positive. These aren't shielded, so don't know. But these wires are kind of tucked under here. And get that, and you can see there's lots of shielding, RFI shielding. I'm not sure if this screen is conductive or not. I can't be bothered to pull out the multimeter and check. It might just be blocking some of the bigger chunks of dust. And here we've got the little fan made by Sunon, and it's very loud. It's a 5-volt fan. And just disconnect that. And you can see it's a multi-board construction. There are 4 boards in here, along with this metal plate in between some of them, which is probably just for heat sinking. And you can see that there's some vertical interconnects between them, and the sensor has a cutout here for the ribbon cable, which is soldered on, which is annoying. And I'm not sure if just removing the fan will be enough. We might have to figure out a way to get this off, to like pry the thing off, the mount. Oh yeah, that's not going anywhere. I don't have one of those little tools that you can use to take lenses apart and whatnot. That would be pretty useful right now. From the top to the bottom we have what appears to be like an analog board, but there's chips with their names scraped off it, so I'm not 100% sure. And yeah, this is just a little daughter board that sits on the top of the whole camera assembly. And yeah, we'll get into each board in a little more detail. And yeah, this is the next one. This is directly connected to the imager, and it's a kind of a medium-sized board. Looks mostly power related, probably just raw power going to the image sensor. And then we have another board with clock crystal and voltage regulator and the status LEDs. And we got an Atmel chip and a big Altera chip, probably a small FPGA. And a couple other things. Again, we'll go into these in a little more detail. The bottom one looks like it's mostly power. Taking the 12 volts from the Firewire, switching it down to 5 and whatnot. We also have some TI parts, which are probably various Firewire controllers and whatnot, and a big resistor on here. Anyway, we'll get to this. I'm going to put on my macro lens, which I love, and unfortunately it had a kind of traumatic event the other day when I dropped my camera bag, which was a very, very tiny camera bag, and not really meant for full frame SLR lenses. It's really for like a little pocket camera. And I had this thing jammed in it, and it fell straight down, dead on, and well, that is why I put on filters. There's a lot of arguments over whether or not you should use filters with photographers and whatnot. They're, oh no, they ruin the image quality and blah 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 blah. Yeah, well, there's a very good chance that this thing died to save this thing. So yeah, I have no problem with it. I put a new one on and we're good to go. First up is the teeny tiny, I'm going to call it the analog board. We've got a couple parts that are actually labeled, but for the most part they're ground off, which is unusual in products made in North America. Usually they don't pull that crap. Very disappointed with you, fellow Canadians. Anyway, there is a resistor under a little blob of epoxy. This may be a thermal sensor of some type. I'm not sure. It could just be that they put it very close to the edge of the PCB, so they were worried about it breaking off. But that's a little unusual. There's a larger chip here. And we've got some missing stuff here. There are multiple versions of this board, so not surprised. Oh, that's an OPA 2227 Texas Instruments op amp, and this one wasn't scraped off very well. It looks like a analog devices part. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's nothing too interesting. On this side, there's a Burr Brown ADS 805E, which is a 20 megahertz 12-bit analog to digital converter, And well, I saw some settings that said 20 megahertz readout in the software, so I'm guessing this is what determines that. This is probably reading directly from the CCD sensor, and this is a TI part. I'm fairly certain it is a bus driver, but I'm not positive. I couldn't get a good description on that. And there's the high-speed connector they're using. It's an interesting connector. It's got a big ground plane right in the center. Solid ground connector. I like it. It's usually a lot of the pins are dedicated to ground connections, but it's interesting that they can use just a solid piece in the middle. I mean, if that is actually connected, I'm not positive that if that's actually connected to ground. There's also an interesting capacitor here, the one with E2 written on it. Let's see if I can get that in focus. Not really sure about that one, but looks a little different from the others. Probably, you know, a mica one or something fancy. But that's pretty much all it's on this one. Yeah, like I said, this one's mostly blanked out, so don't really know what it's doing. I imagine this is all just reading from the CCD. This is the board directly attached to the image sensor. It's got a whole bunch of analog stuff and power stuff on it. It doesn't look like there's anything too special on it. It's all pretty standard power stuff. And we've got a bunch of large tantalum caps, some inductors. The other side has a few active components, but they're all just, looks like they're all just like op amps and stuff. Can't be bothered to look those guys up. And probably another bus driver. And some Sony parts, probably CCD drivers. And my cat is meowing like a crazy person. Oh well. Yeah, not too much on this. This is a pretty sparse board. And one thing of note is, well, these all say Q imaging on them, 2003, but oh, and there's also a little serial or whatever on that. 2007 on this one. Oh no, wait. That 127. Oh, that could be the day. No, I don't know what that is. I don't. I'm guessing that's not actually a date. That threw me off. It looked like a date. Where is it? Oh yes, here we go. All the boards in this thing say Enigma M, so that must be the part that this, or the camera that this thing is based on. And then Lumetrix just changes the packaging, rebrands it, probably with their own software. It looked like they had software available, and it looked like it was, you know, call to ask a price because it's $20,000. So yeah, not going to try that one out. Onto the board with the main CPU and whatnot on it. It also has the little DIN connector at the end and the status lights. So we got a whole bunch of passives on one side, these kind of medium density interconnects to the lower board, a bunch of missing components, big caps, a couple passives, oh, the crystal, which is 40 megahertz, some power. Here's the main regulator for the unit, an LT1086, 3.3 volt. And we got the little status LEDs at the end. I've never seen the blue one come on. I don't know what the blue one does. The green one comes on for power, and the red one comes on when it's being accessed. So it flashes continuously when the camera software is running. So we've got a date on this one, 1909-2003, looks like. And moving along, we've got, oh, this looks like a little LED, power LED there, or something, probably status for when the CPU is running, which by the way is an ATmega 128L, standard 8-bit microcontroller, and an LM224 quad op amp. I think that was connected to, I can't remember if this is where the, I think this is where the LEMO connector hooks up to, so I'm not sure what that's for. Maybe some kind of input. And moving along, we have this Altera Ace X, that's a weird name, an EP1K100 which is a 100,000 gate PLD, and that's doing all the hard work, I imagine, from the converting the video from the CCD right into a video stream for the FireWire port, which can stream video basically just over the interface itself without needing special software. It's just a standard interface. Now there's a configuration prom for the unit, and that's it. I mean, it's a pretty basic board. There isn't a lot of horsepower on this thing. It's not like it's clearly not doing any of the analysis or anything inside it. You know, it's all the expensive software that you're buying. Finally, the board with the FireWire and the power switch. Here you go. And this just has some passives and looks like a whole bunch of op amps and whatnot. We got various components for the FireWire interface. These are the connectors. I like FireWire. It's a shame it kind of disappeared, but it was always a good interface. Lots of power, very quick. And just moving along, it's mostly just passives and some power stuff and like random op amps and whatnot. I noticed that up here, oh wait, no, on the other side, we've got this big 0.3 ohm resistor. Oh no, wait, no. Is it 0.3? Yeah, it might be. Yeah, 3 watt. And it's right next to an op amp, so it must have some current sensing or something, maybe tied to the power supply. Oh, you know what? It's probably tied up in a way that it doesn't pull too much from the FireWire port. Speaking of FireWire, we've got a whole bunch of FireWire controllers. Nothing interesting there. Bulk capacitance. Hand soldered switch. Kind of grungy. There's a fuse here. Little fuse. And yeah, not too much on this. I mean, the whole system's pretty bare. I mean, it's most of the chips seem to be for the FireWire interface and power. But we'll get to the CCD and see what's going on there if I can get that thing out of there. Here I am like killing myself trying to get this thing apart, and I didn't realize that there was a little grub screw in there, and then this thing basically just unscrews. I tried taking it off via the back by removing the fan, but these just spin freely after a little while. So I can't take it off that way. So it must be, I have to get in here now. I don't know how I'm going to do that. Doesn't look like I can get in there. Unless this whole thing separates in some way. It looks like this is 2 separate pieces, but again, how do I get this apart if these spin? So give me a few minutes, let me investigate this. Just want to point out, oh wait, well, I guess that's not firmly attached. Some kind of filter. I'm not exactly sure what kind of filter this is. Pretty cool filter if you ask me. Ooh. Unfortunately, I get the opposite ends of screws. So, okay, well, like I was saying, I just want to point out that the fan actually pulls in from here and blows over the electronics on the back and then out through the chassis, which is actually a pretty good idea. Fan's a little dirty. Well, I might be able to get to the screws through the fan blades, although I don't even see screw heads. Okay, give me some time. Let me figure this out. Okay, I got the sensor out, and it turned out it was just a rubber gasket holding this together. So trying to unscrew these was kind of pointless. This would be why they weren't coming out, is because they were just free spinning screws once you loosen them. But yeah, now I can tighten those back up. So once you get those out, you can unscrew the sensor module right here, and they've got like a little metal plate running behind it as a heat sink, and then it's screwed in this way. These are they're captive screws, but I think they're only captive because this isn't lined up properly. The sensor's a little dusty. This is the little Sony sensor. It's behind its little glass shield. This is probably an infrared cut filter, although If that's an IR cut filter, I don't know what the green thing's doing. So, not positive on that. They may be using some kind of specialized filter for this. This may not even be part of it. They may have just added that themselves, whoever owned it previously. You can see the little bond wires coming out of the sensor. And yeah, this is the heatsink assembly. Runs behind it. Looks like it's, yeah, it's epoxied onto the back of the IC. And yeah, it's just through hole sensor. There you have it. Now, I was saying that I didn't have a way to record my desktop, and then I remembered, oh yeah, right, the NVIDIA software can do that built in. So I'm going to go ahead and try and use that and see if I can get a little video of the software once I put this back together, and hopefully it works still. I've determined that the microphone inside my QuickCam is awful. So I am going to use my lapel mic and just record it on my camera as usual. Hopefully I can sync up the audio. So anyway, this is the Capture software that I found. We've got the format and whatnot that we can set. Now if we tell it we want to preview, it will bring up our little preview window. Let me adjust the light here a little bit, see if we can get the exposure right. Oh, too much? Oh, that's good enough. Alright, so I just have it pointed at a little can of film. So we can set it from monochrome to a color filter. And this is an artificial color filter. So I think it's probably just a light map. I don't think it's doing anything fancy like trying to figure out the depth or anything. It's just telling you, it's making it a little more obvious what's brighter and darker. And we can also change the bit depth and the capture depth and whatnot. Now the binning, I don't know if this is actually on the camera itself or not. I mean, it seems to be because it's actually changing the image size, but the binning is grouping pixels together. So what you do is you get a 2x2 square and treat that as one pixel. It usually allows for better light response at the cost of detail, a lot of detail. You usually lose a lot of detail. A lot of older digital cameras used to do this for high ISOs. Like once you go past like ISO 400, and if it had like a 800, 1600 setting, they would just turn on binning and the picture quality would just plummet. But it would let it run it at ISO 800, which I guess is better than nothing. Anyway, we've got some temperature control. It has a cooler option. Now, I believe there are versions of this camera with a Peltier cooler. So that is obviously not installed. And this thing's really sensitive to my table moving. So sorry for any jiggling on the camera. But we've also got controls for high sensitivity and blackout and all this stuff. None of this is enabled. I don't know if it's a software thing or what, but oh, another thing is that the frame rate really increases when you're shooting at the higher binning. If I go up to 8x8. Now, this is only recording at 30 FPS for the video capture, but I can tell you that that's at least 60 frames a second when you're in the 8x8 binning. And when you're on 1x1, it's a lot lower. See if I get the... See? It's very choppy. It's only like 10 frames a second, if not less. 2x2, I think, gets you back up to around 20 or 30. So if we go into exposure, we can see an exposure meter, and we can do auto exposure, which never gets it right. I mean, I guess it's just trying to keep it from blowing out highlights, so I guess it's right in its own way. We've got gain, which is, oh wow, you can really see the noise pick up in the bottom there. The noise just skyrockets. Set it all the way down to 0. Yeah, okay. And there's an offset. I don't know what oh, this is probably just setting the black point or something. Let's just manually set that to 0. And we can go to color balance, which is kind of stupid that it's here considering it's turned off. So, well, and it's not even a color monitor. So if we turn on the color filter, Okay, so yeah, you can change it with when you have the color mode turned on. Let's try auto expose green. Failed. Too dark or too light? Goody. Okay, well this is useful. And we go into here, and there's a readout mode, and it has a 10 and 20 megahertz readout. Now let me see if that actually affects. Oh wow. Yeah, the frame rate just plummeted when it went down to 10. So if we set it back to 20. Oh no, I guess it's still slow on this readout. On the you know what? I think it's the false color mode. Hang on. Turn off the false color. Okay, so it's smooth. Let's see if changing it down to 10 megahertz makes a difference. I think it's about the same frame rate. Maybe it's possible this camera's not even capable. I mean, it says it's actual readout 20, but I don't know if it actually makes much of a difference. Got some triggering, syncing, blah blah blah, shutter mode, which we can't control, fan speed, which we can't control, which I can't hear, actually. Is it possible I fixed the fan? I did plug it back in. I'm positive I plugged it back in when I put the camera back together. Anyway, this is the camera settings. It's the Keycam B, I guess. Hardware version 0. Monochrome is the ICX 205AL from Sony. This is the resolution. And there's no cooling information, blah 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 blah. And apparently they make a version with an intensifier tube, which we don't have, and just the Windows driver. So that's about all there is to the software. Oh, you can, I didn't realize you could draw stuff on this. Maybe that's to capture portions of the screen. Did it capture a portion of the screen? No, it captured the entire screen. So yeah, I don't know what that's for. Maybe you can do measurements or something. Rotate 180. Display settings, gamma correction. Yeah, just some basic video levels and whatnot. So auto contrast doesn't do anything. Alright, so I just wanted to show the software. It's fairly basic. I'm sure the software that you buy from the actual photo imaging company is much more advanced and, you know, does all the light measurements and stuff. This is just a basic FireWire viewer program. Now, I'm curious if it will actually load up in my movie studio. Well, I loaded up Sony Capture, which is part of Sony Movie Maker, or whatever it's called. Sony Movie Maker? Movie Studio, sorry. And it's not showing up here. I have my analog slash HDMI capture card and my webcam, and that's it. So it's not a generic FireWire video transport, because it can, FireWire has the ability to just send the video signal over DV, a DV stream over the interface. And yeah, it's clearly not set up to do that, so it obviously needs some kind of fancy driver, which is what we're using, but sometimes it's just generic and the software is just made to view it and change some settings, whereas you can just view it with anything. Like, for example, my PCI capture card, it shows up here, but it does have its own terrible software. So you can actually go into this and record a video using just generic Sony software. But unfortunately, this stuff does not work. So you're stuck using their custom software. Oh well, it's kind of an interesting product. Too bad it doesn't really do too much. I mean, you know, it's a very specialized piece of equipment. But I guess I'll hang on to it for something someday.